special meeting of the City of Pearsall. Today, Tuesday, August 7th. The time is 7:08. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Mary Moore,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Robert Villar,
Present.
Richard Donovan, Sonia Hernandez,
Here.
Brenda Trevino,
Here.
Juliana Hernandez,
Here.
Ben Briscoe,
Here.
and Galen Frazier.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Let us stand for our invocation as well as pledge of allegiance. Yes, Mr. Fausto, can you do us the pleasure, please?
Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord God, as how far you brought the city, and thank you for the blessings upon this city and upon the community. And Father, I want to just by faith thank you for the new businesses that will be coming in. Businesses, Lord God, that will just live citizens and people in the surrounding areas at all. And I want to thank you for this wonderful blessings ahead of time. Heavenly Father, I pray you bless this meeting here tonight. I pray you bless our city council, our city manager, staff, everyone that is here at this meeting, Lord God, that you will just be with us and make this meeting a blessing and prosperous. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, entertain a motion to open the council workshop.
Motion to open.
Second.
All in favor? Item A, review and discuss the proposed annual appropriation budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018, ending September 30th, 2019, as submitted by the city manager, finance director, as well as the administrative staff. Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, Council, so last night after the special meeting was over, we had to do two documents to look at today. And we're going to talk about those in a minute, but before we actually get into those documents, I want to go through a list of notes that Joseph had taken as we went through this and put those two drafts together. So we talk about some of the big issues that are in there, obviously, up front, because it doesn't matter which one of those documents we're talking about, those issues are still the same. So on the revenue side, in the revenue projections for ad valorem taxes, we have calculated all of the properties at the current tax rate we have right now. Plus, we've included all properties from completed and pending annexations in that calculation for the ad valorem taxes. Increase in sales tax revenue is based on a projected $13.35 million in sales in the newly annexed areas. That total, compared to what our city normally does, our total sales inside the city limits for 2017 and 2018 was equal to about 141, a little over 141. So it's roughly around 10%, about a 10% increase in expected sales. We also included some very slight franchise fee increases because we do have some new right-of-ways in the annexed areas. Hard to know exactly how much we'll get out of that, but we did include slight increases out of those. And then obviously on the revenue side, when you looked at the budget, there was no transfer from the utility fund considered this year. That was what we talked about last year. The whole reason for moving forward with annexations was to get to where we weren't robbing Peter to pay Paul. So there was no transfer included. So obviously that's a $350,000 difference right off the bat because that's what we transferred last year, $750,000 the year before. On the expenditure side, we had two different documents. One of them is an 80-80 and one of them is an 80-90, and that's the two salary plans we talked about. Those two documents, the only difference between the two documents is the salaries. Everything else in it was identical. And so that way you could see based on one and the other what the actual impact was of what was left over and what wasn't left over when you consider those two salaries. Some additional things that you'll see in there that may not have jumped out, but we need to make sure you point out there's $50,000 included for litigation expenses. That's something we've never budgeted before. We just robbed it from the place to pay for it. We still have pending lawsuits that some of them 4 or 5 years old that have to be settled and they're not covered by our insurance because of decisions that were made 4 or 5 years ago. But we saw we have to pay to fight those because there's a chance that large losses will come. The $50,000 for the HEB 380 agreement that will be due this year, somewhere around $50,000, is anticipated to come out of the contracts line item, which is line item 302 in the administration budget. That's the one we talked about before. Historically, we put $60,000 in that line item we're paying for contracts, consultants, anything that we needed to bring into the city to help take care of stuff. The last 2 years ago, obviously we didn't have any money, so that was spent because that's one of the things we cut. This last year we ended up using that $60,000 as part of the HEB payment as it was. That was one of the items that we used to make that payment, that we're going to use to make the payment to HEB. So we left the $60,000 in there, but anticipated taking the HEB payment out of that line item. It also includes $50,000 for a Main Street Downtown Revitalization Grant Program. That was one of the things we talked about, so it's one of the things we put in there for you to consider. It includes $60,000 for the Pearsall Volunteer Fire Department. That's a two-part thing, $50,000 as requested to look at purchasing a new truck, and the $10,000 for the annual bonuses. The annual bonuses, my understanding when I came to work here was those bonuses were refunded by ESD. Those bonuses have never been refunded by ESD. They've always come out of the general fund. And so we have to have that as a line item in there so we can make sure we cover it. Obviously, we had to add the program budget for the Main Street program, so that added $85,000 to the budget. We have seen this year an increase in the tax appraisal fees. That's the fees that we're charged by the appraisal district for taking care of doing all the appraisals. That's actually a $25,000 increase. And so I'm not exactly sure where all that came from because I was under the understanding their budget had been froze. But maybe it's from the budget the year before that we did not see. And so we saw a $25,000 increase, and that figure about a 45% increase in the fee to us. So we included that in there. The AEP included a streetlight, or completed during this fiscal year, a streetlight audit for the city of Pearsall. The number of streetlights we have in town that they weren't billing us for. So our bill from AEP for the streetlights has gone up significantly. That was about a $34,000 increase to cover those streetlights, or about a 36% increase in what we were actually paying now. The budgets that you have up there do not include healthcare insurance cost increase provisions, which we'll talk about a little bit later as we go through this. It does not include any funds for an EMS contract. Until the day before yesterday, we've not heard anything from the county about that EMS contract, and now they're having a special emergency meeting on Thursday to talk about it. They invited the mayor, and the mayor asked me to go with her. My understanding from talking to the tax auditor of the county is that in their session that they have, that they talked about it, that they're debating whether they're going to go out for an RFP for continuing the EMS contract or not. But they did say in their meeting, they went out for they did go out for bid, and they decided to keep it, but they would not, or they weren't planning on keeping it if the city was going to pay extra. Of course, we talked about this numerous times. You guys know how I feel about that, but that'll be a decision for you guys to make. I don't think it's right that our citizens in the town are paying the exact same taxes the county citizens are paying, yet we're paying extra for EMS when the county citizens aren't paying extra for EMS. The long hauls, the long routes there in the county, not in the city. The extra cost is out there. It's not to our residents here, so I don't know why our citizens should be paying twice for that service. It does not include any new employees beyond what we added in 2018. We cut department requests above necessary increases in base budget, and what I mean by necessary increases in base budget, if a budget didn't have enough to cover their utility costs for this year, then we had those increases to cover the utility costs, stuff like that. It did not include any of the stipends that had previously been paid to city employees, and we'll talk about that when we get into the budget as well. And there was one request that I wanted to point out specifically that was cut out. And I had a long talk with Graham about this today. He had included a request for about $22,000 to expand the park around the splash pad because of the amount of use that we're having over there. There's on the weekend, can't get inside the fence. On the weekend, this will pack it. And so this was to open that fence up, put some more tables in there, open it up a little bit where we could get some more people. And so he had the request to expand that park, and that was taken out as well. Okay, so I want to just start going through it. It doesn't matter which document you look at, because they're, like I said, with the exception of salaries, they're all the same. So we won't, and each one of the salaries vary because of the difference in the salary plans. So you can tell the difference in the salary plans by looking at the bottom line, and that's the major difference in it. So on the revenues, our anticipated revenues, our projected revenues for the year are about $6.244 billion. That's the first number up there that's highlighted. That's from, you'll see that the largest increase, obviously, in the revenues is from taxes. That's the increase in the water taxes and the increase in the sales taxes, both of them are projecting from the annex and proposed to the annex areas. Everything else stays pretty similar to where it was at. You'll notice that the miscellaneous revenues is changed quite a bit. That's because we moved some of that stuff around to different line items. Because when we get to it, we'll talk about it, but like we have we have a miscellaneous revenue line item, basically everything besides taxes and license fees is being put into. And we've split those up now, where they're easier to figure out what it actually is being put in there. So if somebody makes a donation for back to school, it went into miscellaneous revenues. Somebody pays a book fine at the library, it went into miscellaneous revenues. Somebody comes up here and asks for a copy, it went into miscellaneous revenues. So it was just like a catch-all, that everything that didn't fit into one of these small, one of these very defined areas is being put in. And so we've kind of split that out and tried to make that where it's easier to see and easier to understand. And then the transfers in, last year the transfer in obviously was the transfer from the utility fund. And the transfers that come in from the hot fund to cover our tourism and business development part. The transfer that's on here this year is the transfer of the leftover insurance. So that $530,000 will be what will be left over in the insurance line items for the neighborhood center for this year. And so it'll go into reserves, then it'll be transferred back from reserves into the budget for next year, so we can use it to pay for the park and pay for what we're doing for that stuff. So, yes.
But we haven't got that yet, right?
We got the first payment.
Which
We
is
have
like-
not received the depreciation. We don't receive the depreciation until we move forward with doing something else.
But
They
that's-
give us the cash value.
That's not reflected in the income anywhere, right? The depreciation figure,
No.
which is that the anticipated number, 530,000?
No, so we got the first payment, which was like 1.1 million. And it was 270,000 for the demolition. And so that's been paid. The first payment on the skate park has been paid. The land's been purchased. And then we have the supplies and stuff that were in there. And so the purchases to replace some of the stuff, to replace some of the rec equipment, to replace some of the other equipment, that stuff's been purchased out of this year because we had that money in the budget
Right.
this year. That was the budget adjustment we did last year. So this 530 is what is left of what we received, and it has to be budgeted
Sure.
this year to be spent, and so it has to be revenue, or then you have a big hole. So it'll go into reserves on the last day, because it'll still be left over. Then it'll be transferred from reserves back into the budget, into those same line items for expenditure next year. So
Don't we still have the depreciation figure though? Doesn't it need to be a line item on revenue?
well, it could be. I mean, we could go ahead and put it in there, but it would probably be easier because they're not gonna just give us a check for it. You know, what they've said is as we do stuff, then they're gonna reimburse us.
Okay.
And so what we're probably gonna end up having to do is, because if we put the full 1.2 million in there, but we don't spend the full 1.2, they're not gonna give it, you know. So as we do stuff, they're gonna reimburse. And so what we'll probably end up doing is doing the budget adjustments to do that each time.
Understood.
So that we don't show up a revenue, you know, it's an amount that we're gonna get if we meet certain conditions. But we gotta meet those conditions to get the money first, and we don't know if that's gonna happen this year or the year after. And so now we have this revenue projection for 1.2, and we only get 600,000 or something during the year. It'll make everything look weird, and that's part of what skewed our numbers for this year, was we got that insurance
Sure.
money in, and
Yeah.
it looked like we had all
Yeah.
this extra money that we didn't have. And so it reduced our numbers, it reduced our figures, and it was hard to tell where we were actually at in the budget. So we're trying to keep it with just what cash we have on hand, to make it easier to track those numbers. When you go down to that bottom line, so that's your total, huh? Oh,
I had one question. On the proposed taxes, it's about 5.1 million. Is that including phase 3 of their annexation?
yes, it is.
It's already including phase 3.
All completed and pending annexations.
Madam Mayor, in regard to that, Tink, I was just thinking, so the the appraisal district set the value and basically set the tax rate. So I was trying to get my hands around, if we annex this phase 1, 2, and 3, let's say officially September 30th or whatever day, do we get that? I mean, that's 2018, but it's only the last quarter of 2018, so will we get, I mean, will we, if the figure is 650,000, will we get a quarter of that figure? Or, because in my mind, I'm trying to think
That
that,
tax bill that comes due on January 1st is for 2019. So you're paying your taxes for the current year. You're not paying taxes for the previous year. You don't post-pay taxes, you prepay taxes. So we'll see a payment on January, it will be available to us on January 1st, as long as the annexation is done.
but another concern was, since the appraisal district already set the value and set the payments, and if it's not in there, that's not gonna impact us in any negative way.
I think your point is well taken, which is basing it on what's rendered as of January 1, what's on the roll as of January 1. So if they just gave you a net assessed valuation in July, which they typically do at the end of July, it may not include the recent annexation.
Yeah, no, the total that we received from the appraisal district doesn't include that, because we hadn't finished. So they did it based on what was their January. What was part of the city limits was July 1st. So the notice we get from the appraisal district about what our net value is, and it's what our net value is. They don't give us anything else because the taxes are calculated from that. Is based on what was in the city limits on July 1st. So that letter that we have from the appraisal district right now doesn't include any of it. But that doesn't mean that they're not responsible for paying on January 1st.
I just have a hard time getting my hands around that. And I thought the taxes that we paid were in arrears, not before. I thought when I pay my taxes in January, it's for 2018. It's not 2019. I'm pretty sure.
We've got to find out whether the annexations, we contemplated, they were going to be on the books of January 1, 2019.
For 19.
The ones that we've done this year, subject to taxation in January and in July of 2019. We have to check on that with respect to whether they can be included in this tax year.
Quick question. Why does the Civic Center rental income have to go to hot funds?
Because the building paid for it.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
So the next page, page 4, is the start of the administration budget. A few things to note in there. On supplies, under the website, that was reduced by $5,000 this year because we had the extra money in there last year to actually build a new website. And so this year we're not building, we're just maintaining, so that amount was reduced. Down here on the services, again, we talked about the $60,000 in consultants and contracts. That $60,000 is anticipated to cover the HEB refund as well. So we just want to know that. Under the city attorney and administrative, previously that was $33,000. That's another one of those things like we talked about in the utility budget. It was scattered over 3 different departments. And so every time the girls were doing a payment out of there, they were having to pull out of different line items to do it. So we stuck it all in one line item because it doesn't matter which line item it comes out of. It makes it easier in the building. We don't get stuff confused. And then that next one below that is the $50,000 for the litigation expenses for the 2 lawsuits that we still have going that we don't have coverage on because of decisions that were made in 2012 and 2013. The next page, you've got the $30,000 down there. So now we're showing the $30,000 and the $50,000 and $530. That's the transfer in, so that'd be $30,000 left over in the insurance claim for supply for equipment that was in the building, and then the $500,000 and those are rough numbers. That's not the exact number. We don't know the exact number until probably close to the end of the year, but we just stuck rough numbers in there where we thought it would be. Yes, sir.
The liability insurance, did you combine it all in that line item as well?
The liability insurance.
It's split between general and utilities fund.
Yeah, although you're talking about the city and the TML insurance, it's split between utilities and general fund.
But y'all combined it this year, didn't you, on that?
And which line item are we looking at?
It says
315?
315, yes,
Yeah,
correct.
it was split over different departments, and it was all put into one same thing.
okay.
Yeah, it was all that same thing, yes, sir. Sorry about that, I didn't notice, I want to highlight it, I should have done that too. So the 530, that's where the 530 is at, and then down there below on the transfers out, the 50,000 for the revitalization fund and the 60,000 to go to the fire fund that were discussed earlier, that's where they're listed at in there this time, and they weren't there previously. So by combining all that, we brought all the insurance in there, we brought all the attorney's fees in there, all that stuff, so it's kind of changed the nature of that budget. And again, I mean, it looks, 3 years ago, the administration budget was 300,000, now it's 1.45, and of course, you got all the insurance stuff in there and all that other stuff in there too, so it's kind of hard to actually compare what it should be. Once we get the insurance stuff taken care of, then it'll get back to looking like it's supposed to. The next page, page 6, was previously, if you remember, last year we had, for whatever reason, prior to like out here, there was 2 different budgets for administration. There was actually an administration and an administrative department. And we moved all that stuff out of the administrative department last year, moving it around because it didn't make sense why there was 2. It still says administrative department in the computer, but we changed that since we had a vacant department. We made that the Main Street Program Department. And then we've got the expenses in there for that department. On page 6 and 7, the expenses for that department are put in there. So that was, of course, that's a new department that we're responsible for adding because of our acceptance into the program. On page 8 in the finance department, if you remember when we talked about the utility fund, we talked about, we had the expenses for Tyler Technology scattered all over the place in there as well, which is our income software, how we do all our billing, how we do all our payroll, how we do everything. And it was scattered over every department. And so the utility department, we combined them all on the finance side over there. And on the general fund, we split it between administration and finance on this side. So it's not just where they're not having to track down line items to be able to take it out. So that 25,500 compared to 9,000 from the year before, that's what that is putting Tyler in that line item. Page 9, that's that tax appraisal services. You can see we have 55,000 in the budget for this year. We've already spent 58,610. So we know we're going to have, it's going to get pretty close to 80 before the end of the year. Page 10.
I have a question.
On services in the last page, 8, what did you say that 9,000 to 25,000 was?
That's the Tyler. That's combining all the Tyler from the departments into the finance department.
Combining what?
Tyler Technologies, that's all of our financial software. Everything we
financial
pay
software.
bills, yeah, that's everything we pay bills with, everything we keep track of. That's how we pay our employees, that's how we keep track of everything.
So you combined it all.
Yeah, so we combine them all into the finance department. Well, finance and administration department. Page 10 is the street department. That budget is, the only change really in that budget is on the salaries on line 103. We had taken the 3 employees that were the right-of-way crew that we had working on keeping the right-of-ways done, and they had been working under the Parks Department. So we took that salary and put it in the Parks Department. So that's why it looks like the salary did go down, because 3 of those employees now, that salary's in Parks because they're working at Parks. So Parks has a crew that takes care of the parks, and then Parks has a crew that takes care of the right-of-ways. And so we just put that salary over on that side, because that's all coming out of that same department. So that way it's easier for us to keep track. It's in INCO, you're paying a right-of-way worker under the Parks Department out of the Streets Department. It doesn't look, it just causes confusion. So we've transferred those employees over to Parks, so that employee can get that Parks.
Wait,
Yes.
okay, you said it was transferred from the parks to this line item?
No, it's transferred from this one to Parks.
Oh, I see. Got
So
it.
like last year, the current budget is 193.
193 is us.
It's 164.
Yeah.
But that's with increased salaries.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's why the difference, even with the difference. it's
So
still on salary.
I'll see the increase in.
Yes, you'll see the parks, and I'll point it out, I've got it highlighted, parks, I just
Okay.
highlighted too. On the next page, another part of the reason for the big difference is, we went from a $975,000 budget in streets to a $727,000 budget. I just want to point out, this $242,000 that we spent on the street sweeper was included in that $975,000, so there's a $250,000 difference right there. So that's the reason for the substantial decrease in the total budget. But if you look at the rest of the line items, except for the transfer of those 3 employees, the rest of the line items were kept as close to the same as we could keep them, or actually increased. Like utilities, street lights, we talked about those, they've been increased. The next one is the police department. I don't think we had any substantial changes in the police department at all. Haven't seen the change, I didn't want anything for the PD. The budget last year was 1.475 million for the PD, this year is 1.454. The next one is municipal court. Municipal court's budget looks like it's significantly lower than from $131,000 budget to $114,000 budget. But remember, we transferred their portion of the city attorney because part of the city attorney's fees were included in municipal court because the city attorney is the prosecutor for municipal court. But that all went to administration, so that's the reason for the decrease there. Parks and Rec. A couple of things there. So here's your increase. It went from $104,000 in employees on line 103, which is salaries. It went from 104 to 155, so that's those 3 employees transferred over to that department. So what we saw a decrease in streets went to that line item in parks. Down here at the bottom, there's 3 line items that I wanted to point out. We talked about 2 things with the parks department this year that everybody kind of had concern with. One was the parking lot at the sports complex. So we've increased the amount of money for streets and roadways in there to do that, to work on that, and to be able to redo the walking path around, to be able to refurbish the walking path around the park, because it's starting to have some issues and it needs to be resurfaced. Above in the other services at $22,430, this year the budget was only 10 there. That's the money that's in there so we can redo all the lighting around the park and get some lighting over there you can actually see over there at night. And then repairs and maintenance down on the bottom was for the lights in the complex, because we were having some problems with the lights in the complex to be able to fix those. So the 3 of the biggest issues that the Parks Department had are included in the budget and are included in increases to be able to try to get them fixed this year. The next one's the library. There's been no significant changes in the library. Human resources, no significant changes in human resources. Community development, the thing that changed there is the full salary back in there, because remember when we filled the public works director 2 years ago, he also maintained that department. And so we had cut that salary back to just fund a portion of his salary. And of course, we have a director again in that department, so it funded the full salary for that, but the rest of the department stayed the same. The neighborhood center, we've had some money in there for the neighborhood center for electricity, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, no neighborhood center anymore, so that was taken out of budget this year. City clerk, no significant changes in the city clerk's budget. City pool services or city, yes.
1 second.
On the note of electricity for the community center, the new property, where's the electricity coming
That's in
out?
the parks budget.
It's in the park.
That's in utilities in the parks budget. City pool service center. One of the other things that we had funded out of, we had Roger funded out of one of the other departments under which department to fund that now. And we moved his salary to the city, to that city pool services, so that's the difference in the salary there. Before that was, last year that was just 2 employee salaries who were in there, which is the mechanic and our admin over there. And we put Roger's salary. Roger's salary was kind of scattered all over the place. He was getting paid out of everybody's budget. So we put his whole salary in one budget, so it's the same thing, so it's not 15 line items being paid out of. Yes.
So when you do that, when you move from one department to the other, is the health insurance and the retirement and all that goes along with it as well?
Right, so if you look down below, those numbers all go up too. Because everything for salaries, it has salaries, then below it, it's got retirement, life
And the
insurance, major medical, and they all go up proportionally.
They all go
Yes, they all go up proportionally.
Okay, cool.
So his whole salary's in one place. Now, one of the things that we had done in 2016 to try to balance the budget was we had tried to grab portions of salaries for everybody we could out of the hot fund as well. Anybody that was doing anything related to it, we tried to grab portions of those salaries out of there as well. We tried to get away from that this year. We tried to put all the salaries back into the general fund. So a portion of Rogers was there because he was doing the maintenance on the buildings. A portion of mine was there, a portion of Josep's was there. So now we've tried to get away from that and just leave the employees that are actually working on hot fund projects because we didn't have a director at that time. So all the stuff, all the festivals, everything we were doing, it was other staff that were actually doing that. And so that's why we were able to take funding from the hot fund to fund part of the salaries. So if we had a Christmas event, or if we had whatever event we did, it was staff that was doing it, it wasn't a director that was doing it. Now that we have a director that's doing that, we pulled that back out of there because it doesn't apply like it did in 2016. So Roger, when a portion of Roger came out there as well, but we put Roger back into the general fund this time too. So we done 20% in the hot fund, excuse me. With the rest of it, didn't. And so the general fund, he got stuck in the city full service. And the reason it's city full service center is because he takes care of part of everything. He's not just city hall, he's not just like the mechanic just doesn't take care of one department, he takes care of all the departments. So it's kind of the same principle with Roger. The next one is utility administration, and we talked about this when we did the utility fund. Previously, last year, we had one employee that was funded out of the general fund that was a clerk up here. And so now we've rolled that cost over to the utility department. And so that budget went from 35,000 to zero because that's not funded by the general fund anymore. And then on the last page is our capital, where we start talking about our bonds. And you'll see the payment on the 2012 bond listed there. And the numbers look kind of backwards because we switched it to split up principal and interest. And so the principal actually went to the top line item and the interest went to the bottom. And so the two numbers just take those two columns and flip them. So that's the payment of the $717,500 is the payment on the 2012 bond. Now, remember the 2012 bond, we have to pay for entirely out of sales tax because that's the way it was passed by the council at that time. So there's no other way to fund it except for taking it out of sales tax. So basically, over 1/3 of what we take out of sales tax every year goes directly to pay that bond. We don't even see it.
Was it the 12 or the 16?
No, the 12.
The 12. So that's where this 717 is getting moved over from sales
That
tax.
717 comes directly out of sales tax and goes to pay that bond. The 16 then was funded, half of it from ad valorem taxes and half of it from surcharges. So we collect half that payment on INS and we collect half that payment on the surcharges. And so it's listed in different places, it's not listed here. Half of it's listed in the utility budget, and half of it's listed in the bond. The 2017 we don't have any choice, and directly comes out.
Say that again?
So the 2012 we don't have any choice, and directly comes out of sales tax. So if we see an increase in sales tax, in a way, that helps, and that's what we're always trying to do is increase our sales tax. But you have to remember, for every dollar increase that we see in sales tax, 33 cents of that has to go to offset property tax. So it automatically leads to a reduction in our property taxes for the next year. So then 66 cents of that. So for every dollar we collect right now, 1/3 of it goes to offset property taxes, to reduce property taxes. 1/3 of it goes to the bond, and we actually get 1/3. That's it. So for every dollar, we get 33 cents to actually do something with it. The rest of it's already tied up.
There's no baseline, in other words, for the sales tax, it's every dollar, 33 cents.
Every dollar.
How do you show that?
Well, we don't, so in the calculation, when we do the ad valorem tax rate calculation, it shows in there. There's a number that we get from the tax collector, which is that she actually calls the comptroller and gets our sales tax number for the previous year. And then they use that number to reduce what we're eligible to charge the property tax. So it's part of that calculation when we calculate the tax rate.
So that number that we get, the $2 million, let's say that's net of our third already? Is
Well,
that?
no, we get the full 2 million, but 1/3 of that's already been counted off what we can collect in property.
Okay, it's what we didn't get.
What we didn't get, exactly. Yeah, it's reduced the amount that we couldn't get in property taxes. So we have the taxable value that the appraisal district gives us, and then they do the calculation over there with, well, okay, they got this much in property or in sales tax, so you have to reduce this much, and then we get that effective rate, and that effective rate takes all that into account.
So does the taxpayer get that 30% rebate, or do they?
Well, yeah, in a way they do, because it's 30%, and they say you can't charge them. So in a way they do. The two, we get 1.5 cents on every dollar that's spent inside the city limits for sales tax, that's what we get. So on every dollar spent, we get 1.5 cents. The first penny of that was allowed in the cities in 1989 by the legislature, and that's for anything. That first penny you can do whatever, it's for general operations. In like 2002 or 3, there was a second allowance for sales tax, which was the half cent. But it specifically said that 1/2 cent had to be used to reduce property taxes. Couldn't use it for any other reason, but you could use it to reduce property taxes and the city. And that's what we talked about. The other half-cent that we should have available to us that we don't because the county grabbed it, that's the half-cent that they grabbed. And so for them to give that up so that we could have a fire protection tax, or we could have a crime prevention tax, or we could have an economic development tax, that would directly impact property taxes over there because it's an offset over there. And that's why they won't ever give it up. Because they would have to go up on the tax rate if they did. We did receive, I said we did receive the letter from the appraisal district. We're waiting on the tax auditor to give us the rest of the information we need so we can go get the calculation on the tax rate so we can show it to you. I do have some other documents that I put one of them up there, and I've got a couple of those up there I'll show you. So we talked about the health proposal, the health care. So we got a proposal for the health care. Based on claims that we had filed during the year, the proposal or the notice that we got for our health care, the renewal would be an increase of about $85,000 a year. We can't really talk about 12 months about that without violating HIPAA, but we've got some huge claims. And of course, that's what, where I came from, I had 300 employees, and I had two employees during the course of the year that had big claims, and we increased about 20%. Here we got 68, and we've got really 4 with huge claims during the course of the year. So that's to keep the exact same insurance. It would be about an $85,000 increase. There is an alternate that's listed down below on line 3, which would reduce benefits, but it would also only cause about a $4,000 increase. So, I mean, that's something that's going to have to be considered during the course of this whole thing. And either one of the two budgets you have before you, as long as everything's fine with them, there's enough money to pay for the increase from the current one we have. But
Has the human resources gone out for RFP on these?
no, we have not gone out for RFP yet because we're waiting to see what this was. We can still go out for an RFP. We might be able to get something in time before the end of the year. That's a possibility.
We need to, because then these numbers are not going to be jiving.
Well, I agree with that. I don't agree with that because our last 2 years of claims has to be given to everybody that's going to submit. So,
of course,
when they see those big claims, maybe we get some there, maybe we don't.
Right.
But we can try.
It just depends on their underwriting criteria. So.
So we just got these yesterday or day before yesterday, so we haven't really had too much of a chance to digest everything that's in there. I knew about 2 of the claims we had. I didn't know about the other ones.
Is this the start date September 1st or?
October 1st.
October 1st.
October 1st.
So we still have time to go out there.
Yeah, it's October 1st.
Yeah.
And we could get that out at the end of the week, and I think it's on 14, do you remember 14 days? Is that what it was, 14 days?
Yes.
On the RFP, I think we said 14 days.
14 days here.
And that's as long as we have all the information to give them when we do it. I mean, that's the other thing.
Lost runs and the whole
We have to
thing.
have all that stuff to give them. And so we'll see how quick we can get that one together. Okay, so there's one. Another item are the stipends that the employees have been getting. And that's the wrong sheet. I can't even see it. There's a list of stipends. We've been talking about this for a while. Trying to figure out exactly where these came from. So there's a list of stipends that some employees receive. It's not all employees, it's some employees. Finally figured out that this was incorporated in the 2015 budget. That's the only thing I can find that substantiates it. It was incorporated in the 2015 budget. In the 2016 budget, it was included in the base salary. It was included in the salaries because we just used total salary costs when we did that budget for that year. So there's a number of stipends over here on the left that apply only to the PD. There were stipends for merit evaluations. There were stipends for years of service. There was a stipend for heavy equipment operator, for assistant city clerk, for being certified in the field, and for being a member of the volunteer fire department. So we went back and looked at those as part of this as well. Let me get that other sheet. I had Josie run a calculation on this afternoon so we can see exactly what this had been costing the city. What this had been costing the city every year. And the final cost on that was about $51,000. So the left is the tape where we ran the totals. This is all the ones that are actually listed. So they're highlighted over here if they're listed on that list. So 10-3 would be 10-year third, the third 10-year. Down right there would be heavy equipment operator. I mean, they're pretty easy to tell what they are. So there's $51,200 something dollars.
54?
The only one that all employees get is out there, and that's the Christmas bonus. That's the only one that is available to every employee. If we're going to approve a salary plan as part of this is part of what you were talking about, part of what I was talking about. If we're going to approve a salary plan and we're going to look at stipends, then the stipends need to be relooked at and they need to be done across the board. But I'll give you a prime example. PD officers get a stipend for being bilingual, ladies in the front desk don't.
What?
The PD officers get a stipend for being bilingual, ladies at the front desk don't get that stipend. It was never given to them. Merit evaluations, there's merit evaluations given to certain employees, and that evaluation is stuck with them for 3 years. If their evaluation is redone, it was built into their pay at that time. But all the employees were evaluated. We had employees that asked to be evaluated as part of that process, they were told no. So there was a lot of problems with that whole program. That's the budget that was approved. That's that big pay plan that was approved in 2015.
These are already in current pay, right?
Yeah, they're in current pay right now.
They have been.
And they have been. And there's been some question, and the question we've had all along is, when you do a pay structure, a pay scale, you do it by ordinance. You either do it by ordinance as part of your personnel policy, or you do it by ordinance as a separate. You do it as a separate ordinance all by itself, because if it's related to money and it's going to be perpetual, then it goes into an ordinance. If you do a budget is not a recurring thing. You cannot dedicate money that you have not received it. So you can't say in a budget, okay, we're going to do this year, and 3 years from now it's still going to apply. You can't do that. So that was done as part of the budget. It wasn't done as part of a separate ordinance. It wasn't done as a separate ordinance. But it shows as an ordinance because it was done as part of the budget. So I don't know whether it was supposed to carry forward or not because it wasn't done as an ordinance. But it was said, and they said these are going to be the stipends or they're going to be given. But with it being done as part of a budget process and not part of a personnel plan, my argument would be that it was for 1 year and that it shouldn't have been included or continued happening.
I honestly think that's discriminatory, you know, I mean, that's.
Well, unless it's applied fairly across the board.
Exactly, or it'd be done away completely, entirely.
Well, and you go back and you determine, like we talked about, you go back and set stipends. You want to make sure you give your employees a reason to improve themselves.
Exactly.
And so, you set a stipend, say, if you get the certification, you're going to get something for it. But you got to make that across the board, so that'd be for everybody. It can't just be in certain departments, it can't just be for certain people. So you set those things, and you can't have a certification in one department and a certification in the other. And unless you can sit there and say, well, it takes more to get this certification than it takes to get this one, then a certification is a certification. So if somebody we have no stipend for somebody to be a Class B or a Class C or a Class B or a Class A water or wastewater operator, probably the most important thing that we need. We have no certification for anybody to do that. No incentive whatsoever for them to do that. But yet we still have guys that have got Class C's and are working on Class B's, even though they're not getting anything for them. And that takes a lot. That's not something you do in 1 day. I mean, that takes a lot of work for those guys. But it's time and service. They have to take tests, they have to go through a whole bunch of stuff to get that certification as well. So my point in all this is that we didn't include these because we wanted to talk about these as separate, because if we're going to do a pay plan, then we're going to look at stipends, let's do a stipend plan too. And we don't have to say, you don't even have to have the stipend plan done on October 1st, but what you can do is include someplace in the budget that amount for stipends, and then come back and say, okay, what's most important in the city? What do we need to do? What do we need to get? And then start doing those accordingly.
Yes, Councilwoman.
What is the reason why the merit raises is not enforced. I mean, because we do have, the way I see it, I mean, I understand that there's people out there who are working hard, and there's some that are just standing around not doing nothing. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, and I feel that merit raises are more, you know,
Absolutely agree, you have to have money in the budget.
yeah.
And there's been nothing in the budget to get merit raises. There's been nothing in the budget for raises, period.
Yeah.
For 3 years, since 2015, since that budget was done in 2015, there's been nothing included for raises. That's part of the reason we started looking at the salary plan, to try to get it on a level playing field and start working on getting. You look at every other city around, I mean, they're gonna have a cost of living increase at a minimum. I mean, I've been hearing, you know, I go to the city management meetings all the time, and that's what they're all talking about, what's your cost of living increase this year? I mean, that's a standard thing, that's how they keep employees, that's how they keep good employees. I mean, it's pretty easy to retain employees that nobody else wants, it's really hard to retain employees that everybody else wants if you're not doing the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I just feel it's not fair to the ones that are out there.
I agree, absolutely agree, I would love to give them merit raises in both years, there was no money, it's gotta be money in the budget to do it, I can't just approve it if there's not a line item in the budget that says I can approve it. So it could be, all that could be put into merit, you know, you could say, okay, we're gonna do this amount for merit increases. You know, you could set up a scale, if you score it, and it was kind of set up that way, if you score a certain level, you got some of a certain amount, if you scored another level, you got another amount. County I came from was 2% a year, I mean, there was 2% budgeted for that per year, but there was a scale, and, you know, some of them scored on the top, and some of them scored on the bottom end, and we kept it right around that 2% increase. Yes.
I think Councilman Hernandez had elaborated a little bit on that, on like a more comprehensive pay schedule that includes years of service, includes these merits and so on and so forth. So in order to do something like that, wouldn't we have to go to the basics and figure out the actual pay table first, and then we can add all these?
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's the reason we have that's the reason I gave you guys the pay schedule I gave you. That way it's fair across the board based on what they do. And then you can add merit increases, then you can add tenure increases, you can add all of them. But if you don't have, if you have 2 people that came to work here a year apart, and one of them started at $14 an hour because they were somebody's friend, and one of them started at $10 an hour because they were nobody, you can never, until you get a unified across the board schedule, the merit raise and all that stuff don't matter. Because those that started with more end up getting more, and those that started with less end up getting less. And the one that started at the bottom is probably the ones doing the most work.
And I agree, and I think what was in dispute was the actual starting point. I think that's where I think we all got stuck there with either 70, 75, 80, or you know, I think that's what, you know, we want that. We want a more comprehensive pay schedule, but where exactly would be the starting point? That's where I'm having trouble with, you know.
Right, and so what we did on the budget, we started with what you guys, you know, we asked for a little bit of guidance that night, if nothing else, give us some guidance to start the budget. And we heard 80-90, try to start it at 80-90, so we did the 80-90. And then I did, when we saw what the remainder was in the 80-90, we went ahead and did 80-80 also, because there wasn't very much cushion left on the 80-90. Now there was $90,000, we still have to deal with health insurance, so we may still have to deal with EMS. And so it's like, okay, that's a problem. If we don't have to deal with EMS and it's just healthcare, then maybe we're fine. If we have to deal with both, then maybe we're not. You know, and so where do we get that?
And what I'm concerned about as well is all these little things that come up. I mean, they come up, you know, and I think we should have at least a little cushion in our coffers if some things like this will come up. I mean, just like the other day, HEB came about, you know, that came out of the blue. I mean.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree. That's why at the start of the year, we don't just start spending money. At the start of the year, we're going to try to stay under 80% in case something like that pops up. And because we were frugal during the course of the year, when it popped up, we were able to find a way to pay it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and theoretically, in the year, there's still going to be a little bit left over. And so you take that little bit that's left over and you put it away just in case something else pops up. And after 2 or 3 years of putting that little bit away, then you've got enough of something major out that you can actually deal with. That's why you got to, it's one of the things that just absolutely shocks me about Texas. I came from out of New Mexico. If you were a county or a city, by law, you had to have one third of your annual operating budget reserve. 1/3. So if we were in that same boat, we'd have to have $1.4, $1.5 million sitting in reserves. And if you didn't, the state came in and took you over until you did. In Texas, there's no reserve requirement.
Except for the school.
Well, you
In the
know,
county.
Mayor, Two, going back to where we talked about our utility budget, you know, team, we made up 300,000 last year, and so although there's no contingencies necessarily, as I recall, in the utility budget, it's conceivable that we're gonna gain some ground in our utility fund so that, you know, by mid-year, we'll have a balance there for contingencies. That's kind of out there for us to kind of remember, if all things remain consistent. Because that's what we've done the last 2 years, we covered, right? 700.
So we've done, well, I think I still have that one up there.
It's roughly about 350,000 each year, because it was 750,000 2 years ago and 300,000 last year that we gained ground.
So this is the full cash report that we talked about at the start of the utility budget. When you look at the full cash report, when you look at our old utility funds, which is water and sewer, gas, water, sewer, gas, sanitation, and the payroll. Payroll's different because it's always negative because we have a claim on payroll at the start of each pay period because you already have to pay the next, you already have to pay the next payroll. However, if you look at those top ones, at the start of this budget year, we were $880,000 in the hole on the utility fund. And the year before we were 700 and whatever it was, 752 or whatever it was. And right now, well, the day of, a week ago today, I don't know if it would be a day, but a week ago today, if the fiscal year ended right then, we'd only been 183,000. That's the difference in what we, that's salaries, or that's savings in there, money we had in the budget that we didn't spend, because they've been very frugal over there as well. And then it's that extra that's in it. And we know, based on the current levels, at least by the end of October, that deficit's wiped out. And so we're back to zero. The minute that deficit's wiped out, we're back to zero, we're supposed to get our refund from Community Gas, that's $140,000. So we should have $140,000 by the end of October.
Well, that won't be a rebate, it's just we want to pay that.
Right, yeah, they won't give it back to us, but all the money we collect on gas for 3 months, we don't have to make.
Right. So we'll be
Because we've already
gaining.
paid for it.
Yeah, we'll be gaining.
And of course, that prepayment was part of that whole as well. So we'll, by the end of October at the latest, we'll be solid on the utility side. Now, that's a huge thing because once we get solid, we start to build up some reserves in there. If we have a well go out, if we have a gas line break, a water line, main water line break, something that we don't have budgeted, we've got reserves in there. We have another, first thing we did when I started, we had an emergency meeting for that sewer line break. Second day I was here. And luckily, we had already, we were able to, we had to pull that out of the general fund. We didn't have it. We had to pull it out of the general fund, but because we approved the bond right after that, we were able to reimburse ourselves for that. And get that, it was $86,000, I think it was fixed. I don't remember exactly what the number was. But it was within 60 days of the time we approved the bond, so we were able to reimburse that bond. And so we didn't end up with that hole in the general fund, which was good because we finished that year with $400,000 on the general fund. So we were able to reimburse ourselves and at least fix that hole. But at least with that cushion over there, anything that's utility related, if we had a problem, we got to win it.
Well, and two, if we have that, I mean, couldn't we midterm next year authorize a transfer?
Sure.
I mean, if it got, we had a bind somewhere else and we needed to do something, we could.
Absolutely.
But it's conceivable we could flush that fund up 300,000 or better, pretty realistically.
By Christmas. And it doesn't be 350 by Christmas. Especially with the 140 back, we're halfway there, right off the bat. As soon as we get that to do, which is no later than October. So that definitely will be a big help. What else would I have? Oh, so you have one other document up there on your stack, and it was that's the document that we put together today, which is the cost for additional employees, because that was something that was mentioned at the last meeting. Just want to talk about that real quick. So there's 3 sheets. The first sheet is at current salary. The second sheet is at the 80% salary rate, and the third sheet is at the 90% salary rate. So depending on which one you guys talk about moving forward with as we get farther along in the process. If you wanted to look, if you went to the 80/80 and there was $200 and some thousand left over, and you wanted to look at adding some extra employees, this will tell you if you want to add an extra street maintenance worker, it's going to cost you $25,858.84. If you want to add an extra park maintenance worker, it's going to cost you the same thing. If you want to add almost all of them, it'll cost you the same thing actually. At each rate, it'll tell you exactly what it's going to cost you. So as you're sitting there thinking about what you kind of want to see in the budget, you have those numbers to know what it would take to add additional people. Because that's one thing you guys had asked for, so we'll make sure we got that put together too.
No questions? Said no. Last time we did the, we did the budget amendment to pay HEB, and they took it all out of the streets. And you mentioned that we didn't necessarily use a lot of that money because we were waiting for that money to come around. How soon did it come around? How soon was it made available to us for spending?
We started to get pretty comfortable with the projections that we had for revenues in June. And so we were planning on maybe doing that in July. So we have a few things in the budget, and that money that's there for streets, that money's been there in the budget for streets every year since I've been here. We've never been able to spend it because we never had it, it never came in.
What does that mean?
So at your house, you may want to build a new room on your house. And so you look at your whole budget for the whole year and you say, okay, I want to make this amount of money, this is what my electricity costs, this is what everything else costs. And I'm going to have this money left over, I'll have this much money to do this new room on my house. And you're planning on having $50,000 because that's what you make for the year. But then somewhere during the course of the year, something happens and you don't make that money. You get sick and you're out of work for a month. If you pre-spent that money before you actually had it, you're in trouble. And so that's kind of the same way we do this. Those fixed costs, our utilities, our insurances, our payrolls, all that stuff has to be paid whether the revenue comes in or not. So all those other things, maintenance items, we waited, the stuff we did here at City Hall, we waited until towards the end where we actually made the improvement, not the improvements, but the repairs here at City Hall. All those things you kind of wait until you make sure you're going to get what you thought you were going to get before you do that. So that's $110,000. When you think about that, $110,000 when we're getting 2.1 million in sales tax, and we know 2/3 of that's gone before we ever can do any of it because it's got to go to, it basically goes to cover that one bond payment and everything else. So there's that small pool left, and then you've got all these other things you have to pay out of that you can't get out of. You can't get out of paying salaries, you can't get out of paying light bill. You can't get out of paying any of those things, but those other things always end up, if you have no reserves, you always end up waiting on those things until the end of the year. And so you push them off until the end of the year. If we'd have spent that money, if we'd have jumped in October, we'd have spent that money on roads, we'd have been in big trouble when that HEB thing popped up. Big trouble. Because there was no money to get from anyplace else. And so those kind of things, to spend $100-something thousand out of that general fund budget, when there's always something popping up, scares the hell out of me. So we always we push those off as long as we can. I told the guys we had money for equipment in some of the budgets. I didn't let them spend it because we were going to wait until the end. We made sure that we didn't have an HEB or something else pop up. We made sure that we hit the revenues because there's no guarantee that we're going to hit them.
We assume that they will, but yeah.
Well, and when we pass the budget work, that's the hope. We're doing the best we can to project those revenues. When you're looking at sales taxes that have done this over the last 15 years, where there's other cities that can pull out that chart and they can tell you within $100 what they're going to get because nothing ever changes. Here, with the oil, it's a guessing game for a while.
And I totally agree with you, and that's how come I'm a little apprehensive about the pay schedule. That's why I'm so apprehensive regarding an 80-90 or an 80-80, because the salaries once you set them, you can't go back on them. You understand what I'm saying? And if there's not enough funds, then
We're just basing it on it.
what are we going to end up doing? We're going to have to cut again positions just in order to make budget. I think that's where I'm the most apprehensive about. And I understand about the annexation and all that, but even right now, our council has said, well, let me investigate on that because I'm not quite certain if these numbers are really going to materialize or not.
So there's a couple of things when it comes to salaries. And your point, I understand your point. Point's well taken. One of the things we did the first year I was here, because we couldn't balance the budget, was we put in, or if the council members were here, remember this, we put in a required vacancy rate. And so we set more in salaries than we knew we had. Well, we didn't settle, that's what was already there. I mean, we didn't change salaries at all. But we knew we didn't have the money, we didn't have enough money to fund it, because the year before, when that salary plan was approved in 2015, the projected sales tax was 3.5 million. We actually ended up taking in 2 million. And talk about trying to fill a hole. I mean, the first 6 months I was here, we were afraid to turn the lights on because we didn't know if we were going to be able to. So, when we got into that next year, it's like, okay, we're going to project sales tax where it looks like it's really going to be, and now there's this big hole. It's like, okay, how do we get there? And we got within, I don't remember what it was, like $18,000 or $28,000 or something. And 10:30 at night, the night before the budget had to be approved, that was our last night. And it's like, okay, we got to fill this one more hole. And so I said, okay, we'll just do it with salary savings. Figure out what $28,000 is compared to the full deal. Put the required vacancy rate in there. First time we have a vacancy, we'll leave it open however long we have to, and that'll fix it. And that's what we did. We actually had a vacancy that was there. We held, I think the vacancy was, I might have been,
PD?
I think it might have been Ruby's. And we kept that thing open for like 4 months to cover, 4 months or 5 months. As soon as we had another one open, we'd fill that one, and we backfill until we met that required rate. So there's a couple of things you can do. One is that you can do that if we get to a point, if we go forward with one of these, and we get to a point where there's a problem, then we just, okay, we're freezing the vacant positions we have for now. And then we're not getting rid of them. We're just going to freeze them until we make sure that we have enough money to cover them. That's one thing you can do. The second thing you can do is, I think the employees understand that, we're trying to do a lot with a little. But then at the same rate, they're trying to do a lot with a little out there too. And so they get that, and they're doing the best they can with what they have. But at the same point, it's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We hope this is our best hope, not just our best guess on what we're going to give. This is our best hope to try to go forward and do this. We're going to do this with the understanding that if we get 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road, we may temporarily suspend the salary plan, or we may reduce everybody's salaries by, an amount until we get back to that revenue stage, and then we'll put it back in. And I think that's a little bit easier for everybody because it works. I mean, you can do a lot of things. When it comes to salaries, you can do a lot of things. The city of Dilley 2 years ago, they got into a budget crisis. They had a meeting and they dropped their salaries 10%, just across the board. That's how they fixed it. They didn't have any choice because they didn't have the money. And a bunch of cities around us did the same thing. So I mean, there's ways. I think as long as everybody's talking to each other and understanding what's going on, then everybody, we're doing the best we can. They're doing the best we can. And we're trying to get to this point. This is where we want to go. We're going to try it. And if something happens, you guys are going to have to help us out and fix it. And I don't think the employees have a problem.
Councilwoman?
Are we still using third-party contractors
For
electrical or?
Yeah, we don't have an electrician on staff, we have to.
We always have to.
And how about like welding?
Yeah, we're not welder on staff either. And we don't, our electrical costs and welding costs don't equate to what an employee and the equipment will cost per year.
So who's carrying the water license right now?
What's the guy's name? Oh, he's not here at a conference.
It's from Hondo.
Armando something. And of course, we have to have that by TCQ. And that goes back to the thing about the stipends. There's no incentive for any of our employees to get that. We have Class Cs. That step from Class C to Class B is a big step. I mean, it takes a lot to get it. And there's no incentive for any of our employees to get it.
Yes.
Last year we put in raise money for Public Works to get certified, so we could avoid these things. The fees will go out and use somebody else's license and pay on it. Did that materialize? Did you say anything on it?
What we put in place was, what I did was the approved salary for the public works director. It was an approved salary at one level, but it started at a lower level, and that salary didn't go up until those certifications were obtained. And we got with TCQ about getting those certifications, but we never were able to get them to get him scheduled. We have a person at TCQ who is trying to be very helpful with us to get to that point, but the problem is he's in Austin, and the people in San Antonio are where you have to do that, and they got kind of upset with us because we put all
Went over their
when we
heads.
had the first wastewater break, it was going to cost us all that money in fines. We jumped them and went straight to Austin to make sure we didn't have to pay the fines. And the people in San Antonio didn't like that. And so they're not being helpful on the other side of trying to get the certification. We've talked about creating an another position at the wastewater treatment plant that would require those certifications, because basically with what we're paying the contractor, it wouldn't be that much more to just get another employee that actually has certifications as well. And I actually talked to, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 different people that have the certifications during the course of this year, trying to see if we could convince one of them to come to work for us at a rate that would, where we could take what we were paying those guys and just add a small amount to it and get another employee. You guys want a ton of money. Those anybody's an operator wants anywhere between $80,000 and $100,000 a year if they've got those certifications. Because there's 50,000 little towns in Texas that they get contracts with because they don't have employees that have the certifications. The ones that are doing us are doing Hondo, they're doing Vine, they're doing Lidl. I mean, they're all over the country because nobody can afford that. They can afford to pay the $30,000 a year to use a license versus paying $100,000 a year for the employee. So we have to try and find somebody.
But it would be nice to find someone.
Sure. Bobby wants to do it.
Mr. Villarreal had mentioned something, and it follows on the heels of what Mr. Briscoe had said about annexation. And because you had mentioned it's something I need to check into. What I need to check into is, I hope I'm wrong. Because based on the question that Mr. Briscoe had asked, on newly annexed areas, we get to start collecting the sales taxes as soon as the controller is notified that the area is now inside the city limits. So as soon as phase 1, for example, was completed, we notified the controller's office. We have a new area, a new map, here it is. Please start collecting. We'll do whatever you need to do, and you do it on your end. With respect to property taxes, as I mentioned earlier, and where I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, is everything is based on January 1. As you know, that's the rendition period. That's when we're legally obligated to render that and let the appraisal district know what we have, especially if it's a new value or added value, improvement value as of January 1. But as you also know, that kicks off a process under the tax code where you've got renditions, where you've got the investigations, the research, the ability to protest, and then all of those, the ensuing months involve the hearings. As you make it through the period, getting to the end of July, where ideally everything that you have as a taxpayer, all of your rights that allow you to come up with whatever that number is supposed to be, prior to the net assessed evaluation going out to the taxing entities that allow you, along with the effective tax rate, you want to be 100% there. And the only thing that's typically left outstanding is if there's any litigation that results from a lack of agreement once these time periods for protests and others have expired. So you're usually almost always there. But it relates back to January 1. So my understanding of the law is that whatever was annexed this year is a part of the city limits. But for property tax purposes, it's counted in January 1 of 2019, and then the tax bill for the city that goes out on the newly annexed area follows in the fall of 2019. So, as you know, we're going to be annexing property towards the end of the year. It'll be on the books as of January 1, so it'll be in the city limits, and it'll count. But it counts for 2019 because the legal process to determine where our NAD is has to be completed by the end of July. Because we have a 6-month window where all of the computations and the protests and the fighting and the disagreements have to take place. But by the end of July, every taxing entity has to know what its net assessed valuation is, corresponding effective tax rate, so you can then use it for budget preparation purposes. Because after most cities that have a fiscal year beginning October 1, you've only got then August and September to finish your budget, calculate the tax rate as you want. So I'd love to be wrong. I'd love nothing more to be wrong. But my opinion is that whatever we annex this year, we get to tax, and the statement goes out next fall. And if people want to pay it early, they can. Otherwise, as you know, it's delinquent February 1st of 2020. But I hope that may be in line with what Mr. Driscoll was thinking. But following up with what Mr. Rivera said, in terms of what I need to look into, I'd love to be wrong. So that's the part about me looking into, is whether I am. But, you know, I would think back. So I hope that gives you a little bit more of a sense of, sales tax revenue, yes, you can start projecting the pro rata collections as soon as it comes online. Property taxes, then I think we're not going to look at whatever we annex this year, we start counting on for next year's budget. I hope I haven't messed things up.
However, the entity that I was concerned about apparently is exempt from sales taxes, so that really.
No, it's not.
The
sales
power
tax,
plant
yes.
is exempt from sales
Sales
tax.
tax.
Exactly.
No, but not property tax.
Not property tax.
Not property tax. It's,
So,
value is significant.
sales tax, we can start immediately.
Yes.
Right, so, I mean, that's not my concern. My concern is actually the property tax.
And so actually what happened with sales tax on phase one, we sent the comptroller notice, and we received notice from them. They were too busy to deal with it immediately, they would be dealt with by October 1st. So, and that was in phase one. The notice for phase two will go out now. So that's kind of why we projected the way we did on sales tax.
We've done our end, of course, we rely on them to do theirs.
So we really need to see.
Yes.
What other departments, I guess all the other departments are affected the same way as streets. We gotta wait to see if we've got the money where it can actually spend, except for the fixed expenditures.
Except for fixed expenditure, but I mean, we still do maintenance, we still do, we do those things, but if they have any, other departments don't have $60,000 and $90,000 line items. They may have $4,000 for maintenance and $2,000 for gas and fuel, and, they don't have that huge. If you look at those line items in the streets, those are bigger than any other department. And we didn't wait on everything. We bottle patch around the whole year, we'd spent $30,000 in supplies on the bottle patch. We didn't wait to start operating, then we started operating in day one. But the bigger numbers, the $50,000 for seal coating, the $90,000 for the street repairs or street maintenance, those numbers, that's a big chunk. And so I mean, that $90,000 is bigger than some departments. I mean, it's one line item in the streets, it's bigger than some departments.
I was thinking if there's a way to get some of the materials in their hands so they can actually get some work done.
Well, we do get materials done. Bottle patch, you have to, I mean, that
They
materials.
do get a lot of work done, it's just that, get
It's a lot
materials
of
in their
work to be done.
hands sooner. Because there's a lot of work to be done.
I agree, but we got material in their hands this year, 2 years before that, 3 years before that, they got done. I mean, so, we were actually able to get some of it done this year. The years before that, money never even materialized because it was never collected, because it was all rejected. And so that was the concern. And again, we could have spent that whole thing right off the start of right off the bat, and we could have done some street work, and we'd be in a big mess right now. So we wouldn't have any way to pay the HEB bill.
What is that HEB bill again?
The
360?
Yeah,
Or
the
380? 380 agreement.
Their taxes were not done as an abatement, they were done as a 380 agreement that we had never seen. And the
HEB
person
pays the
that-
taxes.
And so they pay their taxes, and we give them, we're supposed to refund, but we just found this out.
And it hasn't been done since 2012.
And the county just found it out too, the county had to pay theirs too, the county paid them $179,000.
And have y'all had, probably not had time to look at every other agreement?
We gotta be able to find them to look at first, I mean, that's,
I mean, I'm just wondering what surprises are still out there.
who knows? It seems, we've had at least one every year.
Walmart? No.
No, well, there better not be nothing at Walmart.
I have one question regarding this.
Okay?
I thought it was just one department for the utilities.
It is, but we keep them separated on there for testing reasons. We have some mandatory testing requirements for gas.
Oh, I
So just on there, I mean, it's utility department, but then it's crews.
Right,
We just keep that.
Yeah, because I saw a gas crew, I saw a water crew.
We keep it separated because of requirements through the Texas Railroad Commission.
Anyone else further? Any more questions?
Under streets, I don't know if this is a typo, I hope it is. Under supplies for gas and oil and such, we normally budget about 20,000, and for next year, there's only 2,000.
Right, and if you look down at the bottom of the streets, it's 1.5. Right, it went from 10,000 to 2,000. If you go down to line 415, we added in a heavy equipment repair and maintenance line item, and the rest of that money went into that line item.
Okay, so that's where the oil and gas
Yes.
is gonna come out.
Or appropriately labeled there. Because we had 10,000 in there, and there was about 2,000 being spent on that stuff, the rest of it was being spent on repairs. And that, I mean, oil and lubricants doesn't really mean repairs, so we added in the repair line item.
No more questions? Any more comments, sir? Then we need to entertain a motion to close the council workshop.
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5, motion to adjourn, please.
So move.
Second? All in favor? Good night, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
I have no idea.